Whoops, having some troubles with the live stream. Gotta set that camera just so. And I gotta adjust that microphone thusly. Come on, microphone, don't be that way. Okay. Let's see, how do I want to do this? All right, let's explore what was so very special about the Buddha, if anything. Tonight's lesson is drawn from my adaptation of the fourth passage of Dzogchen Rinpoche's The Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones. Together, let's chant. Oh, good grief, I'm going blind. Let's see. Where is the sadhana lama? Well, Kevin, good to see you, Ishkabibble. Let's see, non-dual sorcerer. Where is the sadhana? It's coming right up. The latest version will be. I'm going to upload the downloads page, which is available on this channel's main page here on YouTube. Probably within 28 hours. I got to take a while because there's a lag time with the editing because of YouTube live streams. What you gonna do? But anywho, if you want the sadhana, you're welcome to just take notes during the live stream. Okay, so let's chant. The true Rishi, the Munindra god of gods, attain the true level through the true path, and truly show this true and excellent path to others. Is that not why he is known as the true Rishi? So I'm experimenting with this ring light. If it makes me look worse or better, let me know. Personally, I feel like I'm the Hydra. If you look at me too long, it'll harm your eyes. But there you go. So 3 things made the Buddha special. First, he discovered the Eightfold Path. He wasn't special because he was handsome or rich or powerful or born into a position of luxury. What made the Buddha, or at least the archetype of the Buddha, special was, number 1, he discovered the Eightfold Path. By the time you're done with this evening's live stream, you'll have a more visceral grip upon this Eightfold Path. Second, he mastered the Eightfold Path. What does that mean? Does that mean he never had an unpleasant experience ever again? Malarkey! The Buddha, like you and me, experienced the full spectrum of sights, and from the glorious to the grotesque. The full spectrum of sights and sounds and sensations and flavors and scents and the like, and the full spectrum of emotions and intentions and thoughts and memories and imaginings. What made him special was not what he experienced, but what he did with what he experienced. And he brought every experience into the Eightfold Path, to the point where he mastered the Eightfold Path. But what does that mean? When you were a kid, you didn't know how to tie your shoes. I didn't know how to tie my shoes, but eventually we learned and got so good at tying our shoes that we could do it spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively without thinking twice about it. Similarly, when we have mastered the Buddha's Eightfold Path, we can practice it in exactly the same way. And that need not take aeons or lifetimes. According to the second to the final passage of the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught that his path could be mastered in as little as 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks. And wait for it, here's the big punchline, or even 7 days. That's wild. Basically, there's 2 facets to mastering the Buddha's Eightfold Path. There's the physical facet where we train our body how to sustainably sit for approximately 60 to 75 minutes at a pop. And then there's the mental aspect where we just learn how to mentally apply the Eightfold Path. If you start off at 5 minutes sitting for 5 minutes up at a time, once every 12 hours or so, and you do that for a week, every week you increase that by 5 minutes, then within 16 weeks you'll be styling. And if during those 16 weeks, you're using the stopwatch on your phone, and whoopsie, pushed the wrong button. In the first week, setting the timer for 5 minutes, and during those 5 minutes, you're actually joining in a live stream. And if every week the length of time you participate in a live stream increases by 5 minutes per session, then by the end of the 16th week, not only will you be used to my ridiculous punim and my absurd voice, but you will most likely have mastered the Buddha's path. The third thing that made the Buddha so special is that he didn't just master the Eightfold Path and say, "Oh, this is my precious." No, he did the opposite. He shared it with everybody who wanted his help. Now, he wasn't obnoxious. He didn't knock on people's door at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday and tell them, and try to give them a Watchtower magazine. Au contraire. He was just being himself, and people would see him and say, "Hey, dude, you rock. Whatever you got, I want it. What's your trick?" And his trick was the Eightfold Path, and he taught it to anybody who asked him for it. So he was a generous teacher. As the Buddha, it is recorded in the Mahayana Nirvana Sutra, that as the Buddha lay dying, he explained, "I have taught with an outstretched arm and an open hand, keeping no secrets." Someone is so intoxicated by the path of Yang, so intoxicated by the idea of being rigid and fearful and controlling and elitist and competitive and cryptic and cruel, then they're not walking the Buddha's path. When we are walking the Buddha's path in the style of the Buddha, we're going to be flexible, loving, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. Let's explore the archetype of John and Jesus from Matthew 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this button here, and I'm going to try to find, what was it? I'm trying to figure out what button I'm supposed to use. Let's try 8. Okay, and let's go over here and hit this button and go back. And now let's go over here and hit this button. And oopsie, let's hit this button and see if the display, yeah, there it is. So this is from the King James Version of the Gospel of Matthew, verses 13 through 17. Or thereabouts. Probably 13 through 15. Then cometh Jesus from Galilee to Jordan unto John to be baptized by him. But John forbade him, saying, I have need to be baptized by thee, and thou comest to me, and comest thou to me? And Jesus answered, saying unto him, Suffer it to be so now, for thus it becometh us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he suffered them. What? I got that last bit from North Park. So, quick like a bunny. I'm going to go back to button 5. Okay. So, whoopsie. So there is an archetype, and it's a universal archetype, and it's a really embarrassing one. It's an archetype of self-importance. And the question is not, do we each have it? The question is, are we mindful enough and vulnerable enough and courageous enough to admit that this archetype, this drive of self-importance, is lurking in one of the corners, one of the recesses of our heart. And it goes like this. All of us want to be special. And all of us want our specialness to be recognized by authority figures who say, oh, you're the chosen one. You're the Tulku. You're the great Teretan. You're the one, Neo. How can I teach you when it is you who should be teaching me? Each of us have this. It's universal. It is not an indictment. Maybe it's something to laugh at, but we all have this impulse. It's not because we believe and we have a self. It's not because we don't understand emptiness. It's older than that. It's older than the ability for Homo sapiens sapiens to have speech. It's as old as cooperative behavior. Since there were first colonies or packs or herds or tribes, those who were considered the most popular got the most safety and the most survival opportunities, the most food opportunities, the most water opportunities, the most breeding opportunities, the most and the like. So it is hardwired into our DNA to crave specialness, real or imagined. This is universal. Our job is not to say, but I am special. I love that scene in one of the Harry Potter's movies where Hermione's scolding him, saying, don't talk to her. She's only talking to you because you're the chosen one. And he responds, but I am the chosen one. So she slaps him upside the skull. The question is not whether you or I are the chosen one. The question is not whether people are smart enough to see how awesome we are. The question is, when we feel that impulse towards specialness, what are we to do with it? And while we're at it, what are we going to do with the opposite of that? When we feel we are not special, when we feel we are poo-poo caca on the heel of humanity. So when we feel like we are special, or when we feel like, as we say in Yiddish, shtickdreck, what do we do with that? Glad you asked. We bring it into the path. This evening, we're going to play with mantra meditations and we're going to play with silent meditations. And the magic word we're going to play with very frequently is the demonstrative pronoun this. And so when this is specialness, we notice it as we breathe in, we relax as we breathe out, and we process it. Same thing when we're practicing silently. Sometimes when we feel special, we will label it as this. Sometimes when we feel scuzzy and poopy and poo-poo caca, we will also label that as this. So whatever we are feeling about this thing we call ourself, we're going to label it as this. And then we're going to notice it, and then we're going to release it. And we might notice it again the very next in-breath. That's fine. The magic of the path is not found in pushing things away or reaching for other things, but in noticing and releasing in harmony with our breathing through the magic of words. I do look forward to, there's one last question I have failed to answer, and I'm going to answer it right now. My pal James asked, good evening, Lama J, because he's cool. Good evening, cooler than me, but that's a pretty low bar. So James asks, good evening, Lama J. My question is, how did and others attain a Buddhist name such as Jigme Gyatso? I have many names, but not one as great as yours. Thank you for liking my name. Thank you in advance. You're welcome in advance. So here's the deal. The Buddha did not give Dharma names. Giving people a Dharma name is wonderful if you wish to manipulate them. The Buddha wasn't big on manipulation. Yeah, well, why do I have a Dharma name? Because more than 30 years ago, when I was having one of my first, Terton experiences, I received it during a real or imagined meditative experience. Does it matter whether it was real or imagined? It doesn't. You can download from the internet an entire list of Dharma names, but they're a trap. Dharma names don't make us special. Taking refuge in some crusty old meditation teacher doesn't make us a Buddhist. And this means we've gone through a ritual. A ritual. Being recognized as a Lama or a Tulku doesn't make you special. It just means some bonehead looked at you and put a label on your forehead, metaphorically speaking. All that matters is learning the path, mastering the path, and sharing the path. That's all that matters. Everything else is just a distraction. It's just a distraction. Minions of patriarchy love the trappings. And the trappings can seem cool and alluring, but why we wind up being like Charles Dickens' depiction of the ghost of Jacob Marley dragging the chains of attachment he forged through life. The most frightening thing to me from A Christmas Carol is the appearance of the ghost of Jacob Marley. As a little boy, that scared the hell out of me, and as an adult, it scares me as well when it's done properly. I don't want to be like the ghost of Jacob Marley, dragging my attachments about. I'm pretty sure you don't either. A Dharma name is just another attachment. Think of it this way. So I'm a vegan, which means I have a license to be a pain in the ass. And it means I don't like silk or wool because, they are the fruits of the exploitation of other sentient beings. However, there's another reason why, as a Lama, I won't wear fancy silken or silk-looking garments. And that is because it's not pragmatic. It's, putting on airs. Ooh, I'm special. I'm wearing something shiny. The Buddha said, hey, you wear robes so the mosquitoes don't bite you. You wear a shawl because you're cold. You take it off when you're warm. These days, people wear their shawls ritualistically. And if a Lama takes a shawl off during a puja, people lose their shit. Because they've mistaken the practical for the ritual. Buddha was not big on rituals. It was very pragmatic. When you go from living in a palace to shitting in a forest, the only way you're able to keep your wits about you is by being trenchant and pragmatic. So the Buddha was not impressed with fancy robes. He lived as a prince, for God's sakes. So if the Buddha was alive today, armed with a universal translator from Star Trek, and he was able to make sense of what was going on, the poor boy would apply face palms with such intensity, he would give himself a concussion, and nobody wants that. So we don't need fancy pants names. I've got a fancy pants name. I made it official. It's my driver's license, and but in the future, when I train the next generation of Lamas, I would prefer people just keep their name they were born with. Because it just takes away the malarkey. I often share texts written by a Tibetan saint named Za Paltrul Rinpoche. As a young man, he was taught to be rigid and fundamentalistic. However, after 8 decades of study and practice and teaching and realizations, he shed all that like a butterfly sheds its chrysalis. He shed rituals, he shed ceremony, he shed the need for empowerments. He taught the most effective, most stripped down, easiest, and most accessible version of the Dharma. And I'm doing my best to follow in his footsteps, so that you can quickly become the Buddha that you were born to be, and not the quasi-spiritual version of the ghost of Jacob Marley. I do look forward to chanting and meditating with you after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. Let's see if I play with the lights, if it looks a little bit different. There we go. Off, a little bit, medium, high. Anyway, so let's see. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I spent more than 8 hours a day, every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of Buddhism so that you would not have to. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the wrong button, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers, just like you. Okay, there we go. Pardon me, I must be disgusting for a moment. Okay, together, let's play with Shakyamuni's very easy dzogchen. Let's review the mantra's meaning as well as train in bliss and love and letting go. Let's place our hands in the puckered palm position in front of our chest and chant. With whom we invoke the example of the Muni wise one. Maha greatly wise one Muni of the Shakya Soha, wishing enlightenment for all. That's better. Okay, so here we go. We're going to bring the spontaneous play of mind, kicking and... There we go. We're going to drag the spontaneous play of mind, kicking and screaming into the path of awareness and letting go. Doing so is known by many names, including Dzogchen's great completion stage, Sutra Mahamudra, Ati Yoga, and Treksha, which translates into English as slicing through the duality of hope and fear. Ooh, look at that. Excuse me. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so as I mentioned a few moments ago, we're going to flip and flop back and forth between mantra meditation and silent meditation. And I'm going to give you right now the essential instruction for mantra meditation in the tradition of Za Paltrul Rinpoche. As we breathe in, we can silently and mentally recite, relaxing into the awareness of this. Whether this is a sense of specialness or a sense of scuzziness or whatever strikes your little heart. And during our exhalation, we're going to do our very best to physically relax whilst chanting this 12-syllable mantra 4 times per breath. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Yesuwa. 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 Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Esawa. 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 So basically, just as some step stools will have 4 steps, we're going to play with 4 steps that'll bring us up to contemplative cruising altitude. So we're going to begin with the more clunky of the first step, which is clunky. And it reminds me of the fact that most of us, as little kids, when we received bicycles, those bicycles had training wheels, which were really ungainly, but they got the job done. Let's take a moment to think about mindfulness and its mechanics. Every time we breathe in, whether we notice it or not, we are accessing our sympathetic nervous system, ensconced not within the 3-pound supercomputer between our ears, but instead within our spinal cord, in the region known as the thoracic region, which correlates with the rib cage. It has not evolved to support either extreme of mind blanking or concentration, but instead to support the middle path of simply noticing, and doing so vulnerably and passively and viscerally and randomly. Perhaps that is why the meditation archetype, known in Sanskrit as Samantabhadra, Samantabhadri, Karamamudra, is depicted as naked, as a way of representing the vulnerability of mindfulness. During our inhalation, let us silently and mentally recite perceiving this very turbulent play of mind, even when this is silly and embarrassing, or even when it's boring. And during our exhalation, we could silently and mentally recite relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature. Let's play with this bad boy right now. One moment, if you please. Let's hit insert, pictures, downloads. Here we go. Ooh, that's huge. Okay, let's go back over here and see if that has fixed itself, and it hasn't. Let's try that again. Insert. And boy, sometimes this is frustrating. Let's hit this again. Okay. Insert pictures. Here we go. All right. So, at last. Aha. All right. So, our job is not to concentrate on anything. We're using our breath as a metronome. As we breathe in, we do one thing. As we breathe out, we do another thing. Ugh, so much work for a little illustration. Let's move forward. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Suwa 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 Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Suwa. Now let us remove the first of two metaphoric training wheels, reducing the length of our contemplative exercise from 12 syllables down to just 3. Let's take a moment to look deeply into the idea of meditation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we access our parasympathetic nervous system. It too is located in our spinal cord, but this time in the lower lumbar region that correlates with our pelvic region, and the tippy top of our cervical region correlating with either the top of our neck or the bottom of our brain. It is this parasympathetic nervous system that we access during every exhalation is wired to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. And now let's get creative. We're going to play with similes. Every time we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel less graspable, could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void. Now, if you're like me, you might ask, what is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast, empty void? And now we play with a simile. Consider, if you will, the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although is tantalizing to the eye, is not graspable to the hands. So there you have it. And perhaps that is why this archetype of meditation known in Tibet as Kuntu Zangpo, Kuntu Zangmo, Yabyum, is depicted as being translucent and intangible. How are we going to practice Chan's mindfulness and meditation? Easy. During our inhalation, we're going to silently and mentally recite sitting tall, reminding ourselves to generate a vertical traction between our tuchus and our head. During our exhalation, we're going to silently and mentally recite the word relaxing. Whoops, it looks like we're having a snafu. Sorry, kids, that's on me. Gonna hit button 9. Hopefully that'll fix everything. If you've just joined, welcome aboard. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. If you just joined in, here's how we do mantra meditation. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite, relaxing into the awareness of this. And if you're clever, you'll ask, well, what does this refer to? And the answer is, this refers to whatever spontaneously cartwheels across the stage of your mind. Whether it is a sight or a sound or a sensation or a flavor or a scent, or the like, whether it is an emotion or an intention or a thought or a memory or an imagining, whether that which we notice is external or internal or physical or mental or pleasurable or painful or interesting or boring or glorious or grotesque. What do we do during our exhalation? Glad you asked. We physically relax as best we can whilst chanting this 12-syllable mantra 4 times per breath. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Sawa. 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 There will be times when we feel like we are all that in a bag of chips. And there will be times when we feel like we are a bucket of shit. And when that happens, it can be useful to remember that it's not our job to believe or disbelieve what we feel about ourselves. It's not our job to practice the rigidity of certitude. It's okay to use language to be more flexible in our assessment. And so instead of proclaiming to the world, I am a bucket of shit, we can say, I feel like a bucket of shit. And you may say, oh, that's picayune, that's this details, blah, blah, blah. But it's not. Saying, I am, fill in the blank, is rigid. Saying, well, I feel like, fill in the blank, is more flexible. It's giving ourselves wiggle room. And that's important because everything changes all the time. Our physical sensations, our emotional sensations, they're always changing. And the more rigid we are, the more upsetting it's going to be. But the more flexible we are, the less upsetting it is. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Some changes are jarring. The death of a loved one is jarring. The thought of a death of a loved one is jarring. And that's probably a good thing. It means we're empathetic. It means we're not a block of wood. And that's a good thing. But if we can remember that rigidity and flexibility can be applied to our language, to our self-talk, and can help us to become more healthy and more well-adjusted. How are we going to practice jhanas, mindfulness, and meditation? Glad you asked. The more we practice noticing, the more we practice releasing, the less our blood is going to collect in the lower part of our brain, known as the amygdala, the seat of anxiety and aggression. And instead of collecting here, that's my very bad imitation of Cartman, here, it's going to collect here, which is also known as the anterior cingulate gyrus, or a winning answer in Scrabble. It's just a few centimeters behind our forehead, and it functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy. So, empathy, the highest empathy, the highest love, the highest compassion is spontaneous and uncontrived fringe benefit of noticing and relaxing. And perhaps that is why the archetype of meditation known in English as all good father and all good mother in tantric union are depicted as beautiful. What's an easy way to practice mindfulness? Simple. During our inhalation, we could silently and mentally recite, notice this. And what's an easy way to practice meditation? During our exhalation, we can continue to silently and mentally recite, relaxing. And doing so, we will sample from nirvana, samsara during each inhalation and nirvana during each exhalation. Duality during each inhalation, non-duality during each exhalation. Simply focus on notice this and relaxing, and everything else will take care of itself. Let's talk Star Wars, kids. Way back in Empire Strikes Back, which was released when I was in junior high, we are introduced to Yoda, and he is mystical and magical. But flash forward several decades, and in the prequels, we are reintroduced to Yoda, and he is cranky, and he is a part of the problem with the Jedi. At the very end of Revenge of the Sith, we learn that Yoda has come to his senses. He has seen the error of his ways. He's preparing to retreat to Dagobah and to forsake his title as of master of the order and simply be a student to the Force ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. All of us have moments of being rigid. Many times that rigidity has consequences. We make bad decisions and that has bad results. But as long as we draw breath, we can pull our heads out of our ass. We can choose to be less rigid. We can choose to be more flexible. And we can surround ourselves with those who are less rigid, like Mace Windu, and more flexible, like Qui-Gon Jinn, my favorite Jedi. Although Obi-Wan Kenobi had an awesome accent. Hello there! Together. Oh, here we go. Should you count, let's see, there's a D here, during inhalation and exhalation? Excellent question, Kevin, our resident genius. So, to you, Kevin, I give a big old grandpa kiss on the cheek, and I thank you for an amazing question. During our inhalation, it's best to silently and mentally recite, notice this. During our exhalation, to silently and mentally recite, relaxing. So when we count, often there's a tendency to want to concentrate, and that does more harm than good. The only time I do that is when I'm deliberately trying to exhaust myself when I'm falling asleep. Here's so as someone with ADHD and consequently chronic insomnia, I have this whole system of strategies to help me go to sleep every night. First, I sit on the couch and I read with one eye closed and my left eye open. I'm reading a book, or I'm reading a book on my phone. And then when my eye starts to close involuntarily, I pad into the bedroom. And then I quietly lay in bed. And as I lay on my side, I do counting meditation. And the in-breath, I count an odd number, and the out-breath, I count an even number. And if I fall asleep before 100, cool beans. And if I make it to 100, then I get my Hebrew Heine perpendicular, walk back to the couch, and read some more. And eventually, I fall asleep. So that's the only time I do counting meditation, in that specific context, to help polish off what's left of my wakefulness. But that's an exception to the rule. If that's all I did, that would not make me a Buddha. That would make me good at falling asleep, and sleep is useful, but a sleeping man does not a Buddha make. So right now, while we're sitting perpendicular, I recommend working with these silent meditations. And if you asked this question several minutes ago, and it just took me this long to recognize your question, I apologize for the inconvenience. If you've just joined us, welcome aboard. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window, and as Kevin will tell you, I will astutely ignore it. Right now we're going to practice a wee bit of the old mantra meditation. During the inhalation, please silently and mentally recite, relaxing into the awareness of this. And this is whatever comes up, whether it's real or imagined, pleasurable or painful, interesting or boring. And during our exhalation, we can physically relax as best we can while verbally chanting, where is the cursor? Verbally chanting this 12-syllable mantra 4 times per breath. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Eswa. 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 In an effort to put my advice into action and to be less of a hypocrite, every day around 10ish, I try to go outside in the sunshine in my compression shorts and do some Buddha bowing and do some seated meditation in the sunshine in an effort to get oxygen and vitamin D and all that good stuff. And sometimes the most difficult thing is working without these physical props. So sometimes you'll see me reading, and sometimes you'll see my eyes closed. One of the reasons, so some people will have a cow if you close your eyes. Some people say your eyes must be wide open. Some say they must be a half mast. Some say you must gaze at the sky. Some say you must gaze at the horizon. Some say you must gaze at the earth. Some say you must gaze at the inside of your eyelids as if there were dirty limericks written upon them. Do what works best for you in the moment. Reconcile yourself to the fact that your body's needs are going to change. And therefore, your strategy to meet those needs will have to be flexible. Now let's try this again. Now we remove the second of 2 metaphoric training wheels, reducing the length of our contemplative exercise, Kevin, from 3 syllables down to just 1. How are we going to practice the great seal of mindfulness and meditation? Simple. But we're going to, during each inhalation, we're going to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this, and during each exhalation, we're going to silently and mentally recite the monosyllabic verb ease, which functions as a synonym of relax. But first, We've talked. Let's turn our attention back to this archetype of meditation. We've discussed the Sanskrit name. We've discussed the Tibetan name. We've discussed the formal English translation. Let's discuss the informal English translation. Cloud-colored lady, cloud-colored gal, sky-colored guy, doing the hibbity-dibbity. But wait, there's more. Cloud Gal is actively sporting in wild abandon, reminding us that spontaneity trumps contrivance. Sky Guy is passively just enjoying tantric union, reminding us that centeredness trumps scatteredness, thus reminding us that when our choices and our utterances and our deeds flow from the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity, our life can be like a Buddha's paradise of lore. Or a painting by Maxfield Parrish. Now that we've climbed to contemplative cruising altitude, together as a team, let us meditate as profoundly as Sokatano on Lothal. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Iswa 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 The screen's going nuts. I apologize. That's on me. Once again, the screen's going to go nuts. I'll do my best to fix that in a timely manner. Wow, this thing just isn't shrinking. What's going on with that? Oh, maybe that's the reason. Let's try that again. Okay, excellent. There we go. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Yesuwa 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 Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Yesuwa. Let us rest in Proto-Zen's mindfulness and meditation. So the English translation of this archetype of meditation is all good one. Now we don't say that because this is a real or imagined deity to whom we worship, because that's just poo-poo caca, but to remind us that we are already all good. Each of us already has the sympathetic nervous system necessary for mindfulness. Each of us has the parasympathetic nervous system necessary for meditation. Each of us already has the anterior cingulate gyrus necessary for empathy. Each of us is already wired for centered spontaneity. All we have to do is strike the match that's already in our hands. Perhaps that is why one of the many nicknames for full enlightenment is nothing special. There is a myth. There is a fear. Oh, what a surprise. The people who are rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel are scared. And they're scared that if we're not frightened of hell, if we're not consumed with rules and regulations and rituals, then we'll just run rampant, pillaging and raping and writing bad checks. But what they fail to understand is this. When we practice mindfulness and meditation and harmony with our autonomic nervous system, empathy and the wisdom of centered spontaneity become an effortless inevitability. And so I must get, I must work blue. When many men finally find a woman who is warm for their form, often these men are faced with the dilemma of premature ejaculation. And one of the most effective antidotes for that is not to start thinking about baseball, but to simply notice and relax. Before we sneeze, we tighten up. We take short little breaths. Achoo. And the same thing with orgasm. But when we relax, it makes that, it postpones that. No. The highest tantra is neither about chasing orgasm nor fleeing orgasm, but flowing from centered spontaneity. But I'm using sexuality as an illustration that every time we notice even our darkest, most disturbing impulses as we breathe in, the inevitable exhalation that is as close as our next exhalation. So the inevitable relaxation that is as close as our next exhalation makes the indulgence of our darker impulses an impossibility. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Sawa, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Sawa, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Sawa, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Sawa. A few years ago, there was a popular show, a reality TV show called Duck Dynasty. And the patriarch of that show was invited to speak at a Christian mega church. And he said, basically, and I'm going to summarize, the only reason we're not raping and murdering is because we're scared of hell. To which I would respond, and many people more intelligent than myself would respond, if the only thing that keeps us from committing atrocities is fear of retribution, then we're not good people. We're just psychopaths who are also frightened of the consequences. What makes a good person is not their inability to perceive a dark impulse. but their inability to ignore their capacity for empathy. In the slow burn of resentment, each of us is capable of conducting a dark anime. I forgot what the anime books are that are really dark. Maybe if you remember, you'll remind me in the comment area. But we're capable of orchestrating a dark anime of retribution. But when we relax into our exhalation, we cannot help but feel empathy for them and their loved ones, and we decide not to cast them into the seventh circle of hell. We are wired for love. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Yesawa. 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 Let us rest in the great coalescence of mindfulness and meditation. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Yesawa. 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 Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Esawa 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 Let us rest in Dzogchen's great completion stage. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Esawa Om Muni Muni Ma Muni muni swa om muni muni ma 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 muni swa. Let us rest in the utmost union of mindfulness and meditation. Om muni muni ma muni swa 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 om muni muni ma muni swa. Let us seal this evening's practice by training in love and letting go. May all master letting go and love. And of course, you'll recognize these notations remind us of the 8 folds of the path. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Yesuwa. 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 May all master kind, communication, conduct, and commerce. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Yesuwa. 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 May all master the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Yesuwa. 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 May all master mindfulness and meditation. Om Muni Muni Ma Muni Yesuwa. 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 If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10.5 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's early meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the force be with you always.